Well, apparently I was doing too much talking this week because I lost my voice. My wife's thrilled. It's an answer to prayer, years and years of that. Today we're in Leviticus chapter 18, and this is such a challenging passage. It's probably the one chapter of the Bible that people most know from Leviticus. It's a passage that divides our culture today, probably more than anything. And I think before we jump in the chapter, we're going to find it very practical. I want to give you some real framework in which to understand Leviticus in general, the Mosaic Covenant. When we're reading Leviticus, when reading the Torah, we're reading somebody else's contract. A contract between a group of people who willingly chose to sign on the dotted line and be in a contract with this God. So nobody is forced, nobody's badgered. People are choosing to be in this relationship. Reminds me a little bit, my brother was the first one in our family to move into an HOA type neighborhood. And he was living down in Nashville, and my dad is not an HOA kind of guy. And my dad helped my brother move into Nashville, and they're getting all the stuff in, and he came across the covenant booklet that they give you. And my dad is just shell-shocked. Oh my goodness, you can't do this, can't do this, can't do this, can't do this. You gotta do that, you gotta do that, you gotta do that, you gotta do that. My dad's like, why in the world would you move into this neighborhood? And my brother explained the benefits to the house value, the benefits with the pools, the benefit to the community, benefit to the schools. And my dad said, well, there's no way I would ever do that. And having read the contract between my brother and the HOA, my dad didn't feel obligated to that. He was not willingly choosing to be part of the covenant. That's helpful because as we're reading Leviticus, we're actually reading a contract between the Hebrew people and God under a theocracy, where God lays out certain benefits, certain curses, certain prohibitions, and certain things to pursue. And the people of God are willingly saying, we see the benefits here, and we want to be part of that relationship. Here's where they sign the dotted line. It actually goes back to Exodus. Now, therefore, God says, if you will indeed obey my voice, keep my covenant, you'll be a special treasure to me above all people. And all the earth is mine, but you're going to be like a kingdom of priests and a holy nation. These are my words I speak to children of Israel. So he sort of lays out the benefits. And then at the end, he asks them to sign. And in verse 8, they do. Then the people answered together in one voice and said, all that the Lord has spoken, we will do. We want to be part of this contract. We want to be part of this covenant. So, first thing it's helpful to understand that the people in this covenant willingly chose to. Secondly, Leviticus is not a contract to apply to those who aren't willingly in the contract. In other words, God doesn't say, I want you to take this scroll from Moses and go beat up the Egyptians because they're not living the same view of money or the same view of sex as what I want my community to be part of. He also doesn't say, take the scroll and go, bash people over the head who are the Canaanites, the land you're going into. Later on, he doesn't tell the Christians to bash the Romans over the head with a contract. This is not a contract to apply to those who aren't willingly in the community. Now, there's certainly going to be universal principles, as you'll see today. You're like, well, that's a good idea for anybody. But God's main goal is to create a community that is living so distinctively, it woos people into wanting to willingly join the contract, not to badger people with the contract. And look how he says it here in chapter 18, verse 26. You shall therefore, you, the Israelites, keep my statutes and my judgments, and shall not commit any of these abominations, he's going to lay out, either any of your own nation, Hebrews who've chosen to be in the contract, or any stranger, that's an Egyptian, a Canaanite, who dwells among you, who chose to be part of the community, who's living in this HOA together. So is that helpful to understand? So in one sense, when people get bothered by, specifically Leviticus chapter 18, they get bothered because they say, because you have this contract with these lists that I agree or don't agree with, I'm offended. But it doesn't apply to somebody who's not willingly in the contract. For example, you may have friends who are Hindu, and you would know that part of being Hindu is you've made a contract with karma. You cannot take karma out of Hinduism any more than you can take Jesus out of Christianity. And part of the contract with Hinduism is you believe that karma punishes you when you're bad and rewards you when you're good. And through that process of what's called reincarnation. And part of that contract is that you believe that all of us come back reincarnated into different animals or different beasts, and therefore a person who's a Hindu doesn't eat meat, because you might be eating the energies from your grandmother, your great-grandmother, etc. Now, when you study or learn about Hinduism, you don't get offended they believe that. Now, you might be offended if they try and enforce their contract on you if you like a good steak. right? You can say, well, I can appreciate that, just don't impose that on me. Our friends who are Muslim, you probably understand from the Quran that nowhere are you allowed at any time, at any place to drink alcohol. That's a covenant or a contract Muslims make with Allah. And you might enjoy a beer, you might enjoy some wine, and so you can appreciate and study what the Muslims teach, but you're not in that contract, and you don't want people to force you into that contract. So with that in mind, that's sort of the mindset to bring into Leviticus 18, that we're reading somebody else's contract between them and God, living a life that woos other people into that relationship. And so chapter 18 gets summarized in the first two verses of chapter 19. He tells you what you just said. Be holy as God is holy. Speak to the congregation of children of Israel. Say to them, you shall be holy, for I am holy. Holy means set apart, distinct, different. I want you to live differently. I want you to think differently. I want you to cherish differently. I want you to bless differently. I want you to see family differently. I want you to see temptation differently. I want you to create a different type of culture than the one you've come from in Egypt and the one you're going to in Canaan. So what does it mean to be holy? Well, there are two ways that he sets out here in this chapter to be holy. One's a question and one's real practical advice. And my hope is as we study this, number one, that we'll understand how we can live distinctively, that we'll know how to woo people to our God rather than badger people with our book, and that we can understand why some of these principles were so countercultural and how they've really rescued and saved a lot of people. First way. The first way he's going to distinguish here is, remember I mentioned where they came from and where they're going. Now look what he says. I am the Lord your God, according to the doings of the land of Egypt. I don't want you to live according to or imitating the land of Egypt where you dwelt. Don't do what they did. And according to the doings of the land of Canaan, that's where you're headed, where I'm bringing you, don't do what they do. Instead, I want you to walk in a new kind of lifestyle, a new type of ethic. You shall observe my judgments and keep my ordinances to walk in them. For I am the Lord your God. You shall therefore keep my statutes and judgments. If a man does, he will live by them. These are good things to prosper you personally, prosper you as a couple, prosper you as a family, and prosper you as a culture. So the first question, how can we be holy? Am I imitating God or imitating my culture? The way I think about marriage, the way I think about decisions, the way I think about money, the way I think about temptation, am I taking God's thoughts and imitating Him in this situation, or am I just imitating the culture of Egypt that I was in or Canaan that I'm going? He's going to lay out a lot of details here, and he's going to basically say that family is sacred to him. And in doing this, he's going to try and set out, one, why incest is wrong, and if you have been involved with abuse or sexual abuse, you're like, oh my goodness, thank goodness God brought this, and it didn't stay in the contract. It got spread that we could protect children. So it's going to protect against polygamy, because God designed this idea that one man and one woman could be in marriage and that women shouldn't be cheapened through polygamy. And also this idea came out of Egypt that Egyptians, the young women in the family were often subject to the man of the household who was sleeping with his daughter, his granddaughter, his children. It's like, why does God mention this stuff? Because this was a practice in Egypt. So I'll sort of skim through it and I'll give you a summary of it. None of you shall approach anyone who is near kin to them to uncover their nakedness, for I am the Lord. Don't uncover the nakedness of your father or your mother or your sister, your daughter, your son's daughter, your daughter's daughter, not your father's sister, your aunt, your brother's brother, and she is your aunt as well. He goes on, you shall not uncover the nakedness of your daughter-in-law, she's your son's wife, and you shall not uncover her nakedness, you shall not uncover the nakedness of your brother's wife, etc., etc. Why? Because these are near of kin to her. What God is establishing, number one, is a protective mechanism within sexuality to make sure that it's something that's given between two people in a covenant relationship. And it's helpful to understand that God is not against something as much as He is for something. God is a covenant God and says, I've made a covenant with my people. And before I shared with you intimately, I made a commitment to you. And I want you to do the same thing with your spouses. I want you to commit to one person, and I want you to be faithful to that one person. And if you're not married yet, I want you to trust me that I have someone for you, eliminating premarital sex. I want you to see the women in your life as somebody that I have a plan for, the men in your life somebody I have a plan for, that I want them to be in a covenant relationship before they have intimacy. And so by doing so, he basically set up this structure. This is what a family unit is. And he's protecting that family unit from abuse. He's protecting that family by saying, family is something that's sacred to me and something that I want you to protect. And even if somebody in this particular paradigm gets widowed, I don't want you to marry your son's daughter-in-law and you end up becoming your own grandpa by some strange reason of whatever. So he's saying, now outside of that, the extended family, often they were marrying into family. But this is the first time God has set up this idea of family is sacred and defines what a family is. And by doing so, he also is trying to protect children, women, specifically in the culture coming out of Egypt, from abuse. 2, he says, I want you to know blood is sacred. He says, also, you shall not approach a woman to uncover her nakedness as long as she's in her customary impurity. Again, this is a little bit weird, but understanding from Egypt is a little helpful. Blood always was a sign of life, and in the Egyptian culture, we'll get to the Egyptian culture in a second. So for the Hebrews, it was a sign of life. And so it wasn't immoral to approach a woman during her customary impurity. It just made you ritually impure. But he said, I just want my people to stay away from that, and here's why. In Egypt, as strange as this sounds to us, they would use menstrual blood as part of incantations to demons. Why the demons want that, I have no idea, but that's what they did. And so God is saying, I want you to treat blood as sacred, as we talked about last week. I want you to stay away from that kind of nonsense. And so he was keeping people from temptation. 3rd, he says, family and children are sacred. Moreover, you shall not lie carnally. And this is different from just uncovering nakedness, this phrase in Hebrew. When you lie carnally with your neighbor's wife, he's saying you're not honoring not only your own covenant, but you're not honoring the covenant of your neighbor. And so I want my community to not honor your own marriages and your own families, but other people's marriages and families. And the phrase to lie carnally means to impregnate. He says when you impregnate, not only sleep with, but impregnate your neighbor's wife, you defile yourself with her, because what happens is you've hurt that child. That child is not going to grow up in complete chaos. And I want my people to bring about stability, not chaos, into their culture, into their community. And that's why he connects this idea of impregnating your neighbor's wife with offering your children to Moloch. You shall not let any of your descendants pass through the fire to Moloch, nor shall you profane the name of your God, for I am the Lord. So who's Moloch, and why does he make a big deal about this? Moloch was a god. I'll show you a picture of him. Big bronze statue. They would set him up and they'd put a fire around him. So basically, this big bronze statue of Moloch, called Baal in other cultures, would be heated up and see he's red hot. And in the Egyptian culture as well as the Canaanite culture, they would actually take their children, newborns, 1-year-olds, 2-year-olds, and they would bring those children and set them into those burning hands of the Moloch god, and literally it would melt and burn and kill their children. And the whole time, they thought they were obeying God. The whole time, they thought they were offering to God something they wanted. And God is saying, I want a brand new culture for my people that honors children and honors life, and God does not want you to sacrifice your children. And if you look through history, you see, the Pharaoh throws all the children into the Nile. Herod kills all the 2-year-olds and younger. The Germans, the Germans had horrible life. The Greeks and the Romans had infanticide, where they would kill children up to age 2. The Greeks even up to age 10 if they weren't declared worthy of being a Greek or a Spartan. Certainly modern day with abortion. God is saying, I want my people to honor life, and I want them to honor children, to see them as a gift from God. And this is a brand new culture. This is not what the Egyptians were modeling. This is not what the Canaanites were modeling. And so when you see this kind of thing, you're sort of shocked by it. And the temptation is to get self-righteous. I have never offered my children to a big bronze god. I've been tempted a couple times when I was 10. She turned 16. Oh, my goodness. Has there been one? But in general, you walk away from this kind of situation and say, thank goodness I'm not like them. But as we learned last week, we always sacrifice to our gods. And I would propose to you that this is not a time to get self-righteous. This is a time to look very introspectively. If this is sacrificing children to a god, what gods have you and I been guilty of sacrificing our children to? I mean, how many of us are not guilty at one time or another of sacrificing our children to the idol of ego, where we lost our temper with our children? We did not consider their opinions. We did not bless them. We did not encourage them because we need to be in control. Or we moved them to 5 different countries or 5 different states because we wanted to advance our career and didn't even consider their opinions. I know for me, how many times have I lost patience with my kids and said things that were very detrimental or very destructive, all because I wanted to go faster or I wanted to do it my way. And though I've never put my children into the hands of this particular God, I think many times I have harmed my children with my words and my actions, offering it to a God like this. And whether it's ego, whether it's career, we all have a God. And we need to ask ourselves, are we treating our wives the way God's called us to, our husbands the way we've called to, or have we made an altar out of being a good mom versus being a good wife, being a career person versus being a good dad? I think it's worth considering. Because God's people should really reflect on their life and say, what does it mean for family to be sacred? What does it mean for blood to be sacred? What does it mean for children and marriage to be sacred? And he goes on from there and he says, sexual intimacy was something that was sacred. And again, remember, God's not against something as much as he is for something. So he plays out here in this verse. He says, it's not good for male to be with a female. Then he goes, male to be with a male. And he goes on to say, I don't want, you sleeping with your cat or your dog or animals and vice versa. And then you're like, why do you have to mention this kind of stuff? And again, it's because God's for something. God creates man and woman sacred in his image, and he makes them compatible. Biologically compatible, soulishly compatible, and he wants his people to pursue a relationship of that kind of design that will woo other people to this relationship. And the reason he mentions bestiality here is because ethicists have always said that one of the reasons that's immoral is because the animal can't give consent. But again, why is he mentioning this stuff? Well, a little Egyptian background here. Remember our Egyptian gods? Look at them for a second. They're all half human, half animal. Alligator head here, there's a goat, there's a bird, there's an owl. In the Egyptian culture, part of your sexual practice was that you would connect with the gods by getting involved with both humans and animals. And so this was a common practice. So the reason God's forbidding it is because he says, no, this is something sacred between a man and a woman that I've designed not to be used with animals. It's almost like you ever come across a product and some lawyer or some company had to put a warning on that product. Why? Because somebody did something stupid, right? God doesn't mention these arbitrary comments except that they had a whole culture obsessed with this that they're coming out of. Here's a couple of products I came across. Here's the first one. A blanket. On the blanket it says, not to be used as protection from a tornado. Now, why is that on there? Except that somewhere in the past, somebody had a tornado going through and went, oh my goodness, grab the blanket. It stops the boogeyman. I'm sure it'll stop the tornado, right? And they probably sued the company because the blanket didn't protect them from the tornado to Oz. Here's another one. In some countries, on the bottom of a Coke bottle, open the other end. Here's another one. Now this one, I know you've been tempted to do this, so this prohibition is going to be very helpful for you today. Here it is. On a Sears hairdryer, do not use while sleeping. Because I know last night you're heading to bed. Oh my gosh, it's really tight. You know what I had to do before I head to bed? I blow dry my hair. Right? But again, they had to put this here because somebody in the past tried it. Here's one more. It's one of my favorites. On a bar of dial soap. Directions. Use like regular soap. Versus what? Like, what's... I guess we shouldn't ask, right? My point is, God is not arbitrarily throwing these sort of random ideas together. He's for something, and he wants his people to be for something. And that's why he's put them here. So the question is then, am I imitating God or imitating culture in how I make decisions, how I handle my money, how I observe the world around me? Now, again, it would be easy to get self-righteous, but the Bible properly understood should eliminate all self-righteousness. Well, I've never impregnated my neighbor's wife. Well, I've never, thought my cat was attractive. And here is why the Bible says that we're all equally in need of forgiveness, that whatever we've done, we can be forgiven, but that we don't come to this with self-righteousness. Because Jesus takes these ideas in Leviticus and expands them to humble us all. He says, you've heard it said, do not commit adultery. But I say to you, if you even looked at a woman with lust in your heart, you've broken the heart of the law. You've already committed adultery with her. To which you're saying, oh my goodness, I didn't check the box from Leviticus. But now if Jesus explained that's what it was about, I think I lusted after a woman 6 times this week, 6 times that last hour, whatever it was in the culture we're in today. To which all the women are like, yeah, tell these men. They got a real problem with that. Now, this lust problem. But see, lust is bigger than just sex. You lust after other people's approval. You lust after people, certain houses, certain homes, to put a certain persona together. You lust after control. That's why you worry. See, the more you understand the Bible, the law humbles us all versus pointing our fingers. And we all go, God, I need your grace and I need your leadership in my life. Now, this idea from Leviticus gets reiterated by Paul in the New Testament, showing us that there's a universal principle here, and he expands the list as well. Look what he includes. Do you not know that the unrighteous will not inherit the kingdom? Now, this isn't like going to heaven or hell. This is more like if you want the full dose of God's kingdom operating in your life, you want to fully inherit it or take ownership of it, here's things that block the kingdom working in your life. Don't be deceived. Neither fornicators, that's having premarital sex, or idolaters, that's any idol in your life, making anything good in your life more important than God. Oh my goodness, I do that 10 times an hour. When does status, performance, appearance, money, resume, wanting a comfortable life become more important than God? Nor adulterers, that's extramarital sex, homosexuality, sodomites, nor stealing from one another, nor coveting. Oh my goodness, he puts coveting in there. So the minute we want to sort of, wave our finger at something from Leviticus, we're immediately humbled by saying, oh my goodness, how often do I covet? Not just somebody else's wife, but somebody else's car, somebody else's gimmick, somebody else's lake home, somebody else's whatever it is. You see how the Bible humbles us and it helps us go, God, if I'm going to make a contract with you, then God, I want to think your thoughts after you in all these areas. But here's what's so powerful. He says, no matter what you've struggled with, and we've all struggled with one of these, or many of these, you can be washed. And as a washed people who can be forgiven of anything you've ever done, I want you to live in a community as Christ followers, or back in Leviticus as God followers, and I want you to live like washed people. And washed people aren't under guilt and shame all the time. Washed people say, I'm living in forgiveness. And because he washed me, because he cleansed me, because he forgave me, I want to try and live holy as he is holy. I want to live consistent with the God who's washed me and loves me and has treasured me and made me his holy nation. And so the washing becomes the motivation for your living. And now anyone can be washed, and I want to be more sanctified, and this is the word holy, it means to be set apart, sanctified. I want to be increasingly sanctified or set apart to show the community what my God is like. And I mentioned self-righteousness because I think one of the reasons this particular passage is so hurtful in our community or our culture today is because it's often associated with self-righteousness. People often ask us, say, Chad, what do you think the unforgivable sin is? I said, I know what the unforgivable sin is. You do. What's the unforgivable sin? It's always the sin you don't struggle with. Just ask people. Whatever their list of the bad sin is, it's whatever they don't struggle with. And yet what the law does is the law shows us that, oh my goodness, disobeying your parents is in the same list as adultery in Romans chapter 1. The goal here is to humble us so that we all realize we need grace. Or think of it this way. There's an interesting passage in Romans chapter 7. If you remember Monty Python, so Monty Python is one of my favorite movies. And in Monty Python, there's the bridge scene. So if you remember, one of the knights comes up and they got to cross over the bridge to get to where they're going. But to get past the bridge, they've been warned, you must answer 3 difficult questions. It's hard to do the bridge guy with his voice, by the way, I have to mention. 3 difficult questions. And so they're pretty intimidated, but the first knight comes up and he comes to the bridge keeper, and the bridge keeper says, what is your name? I'm King Arthur, King of Britain. What is your favorite color? Red. All right, you may go. And he walks across. And the guy who was scared to death the next night was so antsy, he's like, well, that was easy. I could pass those. He walks up. All right, ask me your questions. Come on. What is your name? Sir Lancelot. What is the air velocity of a European swallow? I don't know. And he gets thrown off, right? So here's what happens. It's going to apply, I promise. So Paul, in the book of Romans, chapter 7, says, this is unbelievable. Nay, I had not known sin, for I had not known lust. The Apostle Paul says of all the things he struggled with, he did not know lust. He never struggled with lust. This is in the inspired scriptures. So he's looking at the bridge and saying, hey, if you want to know how to get into heaven, they're going to ask you about lust, and there's a certain checkbox. I'm going to do fine. So he walks up to the bridge keeper. Go ahead and ask me. I'm the Apostle Paul. Do you struggle with lust? I've never known lust. I've been a Pharisee. Let me in. He said, but then they asked me a different question. Though I didn't struggle with lust, he said, I would have not have known covetousness unless the law had said, you shall not covet. I walked up to the bridge thinking I was going to do fine, and he said, have you ever coveted? Ooh. And Paul, a very wealthy man who had inherited his citizenship from his father, who probably made all the tents for Mark Antony, very rich family. And he says, and sin deceived me, and covetousness slew me. Oh my goodness, I could pass the lust test, but I couldn't even make it a day, a minute, a second on the covetousness test. And I think that's a humility that comes to bear when we say, God, I want to live holy. But I'm not just going to selectively pick a verse here or a verse there. I'm going to allow you to transform me. Let me get practical for a second. There's a tool that I came across years ago that I use often in my own mind and in helping people in dealing with this issue of lust and covetousness. It comes from a book called The Temptations Men Face, but it could be The Temptations People Face, and it's the 12 steps to an affair. And instead of walking holy and saying, God, I need to make my goal to pursue my wife, pursue my husband, adapt to them, not find a new soulmate, but to become the soulmate to the person God has for me. That's God's ideal, pursuing holiness. But at some point you're like, I probably married the wrong person. He's too unavailable. She's too needy. This isn't working out. He's never going to get it. She's never going to get it. All these things we say. And what happens is you step off that path and you step onto another path. And the first stage is readiness. You haven't met anybody yet, but you're in readiness mode. You're ready for something new. You're ready for someone to get you. You're ready for something that's not him or her. The next stage is alertness. You become aware of somebody who has strengths that are different from your spouse's strengths. And you begin to compare. This is always what happens. You compare that person's strengths to your spouse's weaknesses. And that's why it's a fantasy, because you're not seeing they have weaknesses too. But what happens is you begin to tell yourself, oh, if I was just with somebody like that. And now you've taken 2 steps toward an affair and you don't even realize it. Just because you're alert to somebody who you like their personality, you click better with them. And instead of saying, no, I got to figure out how to adapt to and become a soulmate in this challenging relationship I might have, you begin to imagine yourself with somebody else. You're alert to them. Third thing that happens is you have an innocent meeting. It's truly innocent. It's after a tennis match. Your kids are both playing and you have a little chat. Hey, your son did a great job today. Oh, your daughter did great too. And you feel some kind of chemistry. Not necessarily sexual chemistry, but just a sense that this person listens well. This person gets your personality. It's innocent. Well, next time you go to that soccer match or that business meeting, it's not just an innocent meeting, it's an intentional meeting. You intentionally stay a little bit longer after the game. Hey, let's talk about the game today. You intentionally stay after the business meeting. Hey, what'd you think about what the boss said today? You're intentionally making an experience to have a little bit more conversation. It goes from there to public lingering. You publicly linger after those meetings or after those games. Private lingering. You know what? We ought to work on that project together. It's killing me. It's killing you. How about we have dinner tonight and we work on that project together? Oh, your son's got a birthday party? I love putting birthday parties together. How about I'll help you with that? And now you have what's called purposeful isolating. It's for a purpose. And somebody might come to you and say, well, something seems a little weird here. You seem like you're down there. No. It's just for business. No. It's not a big deal. And you don't even realize you're down the path of lust and temptation. And after that business meeting, after that little gathering together, your kids are after the soccer match, they're like pulling you, and you realize that you and this person are the only 2 talking. Everybody else has left like 20 minutes ago. And the warning bells aren't going off. And then you say, we ought to do this again sometime. And now you have a chance to get together, and there is no purpose. There's no business meeting. You're just personally isolating yourself from other people. And then after that dinner, you give a quick embrace, and the embrace gets a little bit longer, and then you end up with affectionate embracing and ultimately having an affair. Right? I mean, you've seen this 100 times, thousands of times. And if we want to be people who are holy, I'm always amazed as Christians, I'm always amazed in my own heart, that the question I often ask is, how far can I go before I fall off? Get as close to temptation as I can. Well, that is not a wise way of thinking. Instead, it's how can I be pursuing the path God has for me? I don't want to feel guilty when I get here, or feel here, or get here. How do I sensitize my conscience way over here when I just realize I'm leaning away from my marriage? How do I sensitize my conscience, what I call my inner spidey sense, womp, 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 when I just become alert to somebody who I'm comparing to my spouse? If we're going to pursue holiness, we need to ask God to allow His Holy Spirit to tell us, not are we getting close to temptation, but am I really pursuing the marriage, the family that you've called me to pursue? And this has been a very helpful tool I've used in my own life, with lives of other people, to really begin to wrestle with that. How do I stay close to God and not fall into temptation? And the back half of Leviticus 18 gives us two really practical advices on that. So our first question was, how do we be holy? We ask ourselves, am I imitating the culture or imitating God? The second thing is this, very practical. If you want to be holy, the way to keep your distance from temptation is by staying close to righteousness. Don't make the focus your temptation. Then you're thinking about that all the time. The goal is to be close to righteousness. Two practical advice. Number one, see temptation, greed, ego, pride, losing your temper. Do you really see temptation? Do I really see temptation as defilement? Look at the word he uses. Do not defile yourself with any of these things. By all these things are defiled, which I am casting out before you, the land is defiled. The word defiled literally means to desecrate or to trample. Do I see losing my temper as trampling on God's virtue of patience? Do I see overspending as God trampling on wise stewardship? Do I see an emotional affair as trampling on God's desire to have me adapt to somebody different from me? No, we really don't. And the reason we go down this path is because we say to ourselves, well, he doesn't get it, she doesn't get it, I deserve this, I shouldn't have to put up with this, it's too hard. So we don't see temptation as trampling on something good, our innocence, God's purity, or the idea that God's faithful. And because we don't see temptation for what it is, we basically say, God's holding out on me. The good stuff's over here. How can I get as close to the good stuff as I can without breaking His law? Rather than saying, no, the good stuff's over there with Him. How can I get as close to God as possible? Close to His goodness, His faithfulness, His generosity. How can I learn to be generous with my body in the bedroom? How can I learn to be generous with my spirit? How can I learn to be generous in my pocketbook? How do I learn to be more and more self-controlled, more and more patient, more and more kind? That's the good stuff. And the way you stay away from the bad stuff is staying close to the good stuff. You see temptation as defilement, and then look what he says here, real practical, number 2. Keeping close is the best way to keep away. If you want to keep away from temptation, spiritual temptations, emotional temptations, the best way to keep away from that is to stay close to God. When you get close to God, His attributes rub off on you. When you begin to see how compassionate He is to you, you find yourself being more compassionate to others. When you see how generous He is, you want to be more generous to others. When you see how faithful and committed He is to you, when you're not very faithful and committed to Him, it makes you want to be more faithful and committed to the people in your family who maybe haven't been as faithful to you. The closer you get to God, the more His communicable attributes rub off on you, and they transform you and they change you. So we need to get close to God. That's the secret. And look how he says it twice in chapter 18. You shall therefore keep my statutes. If you keep close to me, if you keep my judgments, if you keep in proximity to me, then the result of keeping close to me is you don't commit any of the abominations. It says again in verse 30, if you keep close to me, keep my ordinance so that you do not commit any of the abominations. So don't focus on what I'm trying to avoid. Be like me saying, hey, all day long I want you to not think about your favorite dessert. So I put little Post-it notes all over my house, all over my mirrors. Don't think about Luminaldi's, Cookie Monster, chocolate chip, ice cream on top with hot fudge, and a cherry on top with whipped cream that I used to get in Chicago. And I've got a note in my car, don't think about the Cookie Monster. And I got a note in my mirror, don't think about the Cookie Monster. What am I doing all day long? Thinking about the Cookie Monster. The way to stay free from temptation is not, I'm not going to lust, I'm not going to be greedy, I'm not going to lose my temper. That's all day long you're focused on the law versus, I want to be holy as you are holy. Tell me what you're like. Tell me how you'd handle this. Show me who you are. Keeping close to God is the best way to keep away from temptation. And then we put those disciplines in our life. I remember I was helping a couple one time, and I would do initial meetings with couples who are struggling with things, and then I'll pass them off to a counselor. And we were in the first conversation I had with the husband who'd had an affair, and I was talking with his wife, and we'd been family friends for a while, and so she's saying, this is so helpful for you to help me process through this and to get us connected to a counselor. She said, but I'd love this to be two-way. Instead of you being the pastor, me being the recipient, you being the counselor, me being the counselee. I'd like to be able to make this reciprocal, where I could also sort of, bear your burdens and understand where you're coming from. Now, there was nothing inappropriate about it. She genuinely was seeking counsel. She was genuinely appreciating my empathy. And while she didn't have any intention that was negative behind it, my spidey sense is going crazy. Womp, 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 womp. And I had a conversation. It was a little awkward. I said, listen, I appreciate that, and I appreciate you affirming my listening skills, and it's helpful for you. But I don't talk about my personal lives with women who are not my wife. And that's nothing about you. That's just about me. That's about me protecting my marriage. It's about me protecting my career. It's also about me just trying to honor that it might be easier for me to talk to my personal issues with somebody else than my wife, but God's called me to figure out how to do it with my wife, even if it's more difficult. It was an awkward conversation, but it was something that keeps me safe. It was something that says I'm going to pursue my wife and honor that, because I don't want to be somebody's sad story. I don't want you to be somebody's sad story. A few months ago, Vice President Pence was sort of raked over the coals because he made a commitment not to meet in public with women if his wife wasn't there. This is ridiculous. I can't believe it. You heard all over the place. Whether you're Democrat, Republican, or just disillusioned like most of us, wouldn't all of our politicians be in less trouble if they had any type of personal policy like that? And what does that say to your spouse? He says, number one, I want you to know you can trust me. Number two, I want to be, not just you can trust me, not just my own temptability, I'm just as temptable as anybody else, but more than that, I want to be above reproach. I want to be blameless. In a world where our reputations are so important to us, we have to put systems and habits in place to protect our integrity and protect how we're perceived. So the way we keep close is to keep away. So it brings us back to then how he summarizes the whole chapter in verse 19, 1 and 2. So therefore, tell the children of Israel who's signing this contract, I want you to be holy, for I am holy. I, the Lord God, am holy. Now, lest you think this is just an Old Testament idea, the Apostle Peter picks up the same verse and repeats it in the New Testament. Here's what he says. He says, therefore, using a battle metaphor, gird up your loins of your mind. You got to fight. We're in a battle with a culture that is very antithesis toward this. And so if you want to personally be holy in all your conduct, you got to, number one, realize this is a battle, a daily battle, an emotional battle, a mental battle. You got to gird up the loins of your mind. You're getting ready to go into battle. Be sober. Don't think you're not temptable. Don't think it couldn't happen to you. Don't be naive. And the way you're going to be able to do this is you got to start off with a foundation to rest in the hope fully upon the grace. You start from a place of saying, I am temptable. Oh my goodness, I've done so many things. I needed grace. God, thank you for washing me. Thank you for forgiving me. Thank you for meeting me where I am. And when you fully understand the grace, when you get close to Christ and see what he did for you, it's out of that grace, his forgiveness of you, that you can then are motivated not to have to obey, but to want to please the one who made you pleasing. So when you rest in the grace, you're then motivated to be holy in all of your conduct, all of it. God, in light of what you've done, in light of you owning it all, how would you want me to handle this money? How would you want me to handle this conflict? How would you want me to handle this parenting issue? How would you want me to handle this situation with my enemy? God, I want to be holy, set apart, distinct in all of my conduct because of the washing you gave, because of the grace you bestowed upon me. And there he quotes Leviticus, because it is written, be holy, for I am holy. And if we will live holy lives, who would not want to be around or be invited into a community that honors people and honors women and honors marriage and bestows faithfulness and adopts children who nobody else wants and cares and loves and is humble and not self-righteous? If we could live out the spirit of holiness in all our conduct, we wouldn't be badgering people with the Bible. We'd be wooing people into a relationship with a God that says, I may not agree with everything you just talked about. I may not agree with everything that's said in that chapter. But I tell you this, I love the spirit of what's coming out of your heart, and I want more of that in my life. Let's pray. Father, make us holy people who want to lean into you, who want to love anyone and everyone, who want to live distinct lives in Egypt and Canaan, and to keep ourselves pure for you because you kept yourself pure for us. We ask these things in Jesus' name. Amen. Thanks for being here. We'll see you all next week.